Hi, my name is John Ray Petcha. I'm not a Quaker, I'm a Quacklick. But the FCNL, is a national organization, I've said before, but FCNL is local too, so our local meetings are the second Tuesday evening every month. The meeting house is real close to here. It's just off Victory Parkway. It's the Quaker meeting house. And what we do is lobby our local Congress people, and it's basically the same thing we want. So peace and social justice, and so if you like to lobby, which means you make friends with the enemy. I mean, you rarely want to be their friends and explain to them why you are doing what you want to do. And so if you're interested in that, see me afterwards.
Okay, more announcements.
Just a quick reminder that Trump Care isn't dead yet. If you haven't called Portman, do it. I sent a fax through Resist Bot over the internet really easily and called this morning. So they're getting ready to vote yet again on a horrible, horrible idea for a health care bill. So take the time to make a call, send a fax, send an email.
Go for it, guys. It doesn't seem like it's ever over.
Nope.
They seem to keep, it's like whack-a-mole. Like whack-a-mole. Okay, other announcements. Robert.
How's everybody doing tonight? Today, excuse me. I represent the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition tomorrow on the campus of the University of Cincinnati at the McMicken Commons. There'll be a demonstration against the Trump-DeVos budget proposals, especially when it comes to the federal role of education. We're trying to stop privatization and charter schools and vouchers, and we're fighting the same fight in Ohio. And I thought this was the marijuana meeting.
No, sorry.
No, women helping women.
That's 1 o'clock. That's 2 times ago, okay. I want to thank everybody. They bought me a cake today. It's my birthday. I'm totally surprised and touched. Thank you very much. Everybody have a piece of cake before you leave.
You have to sing.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Robert. Happy birthday to you. And many more. Bennett.
This is a follow-up to the healthcare issue. There's a die-in at Portman's office, a die-in, 4:30 Thursday, 312 Walnut.
Diane.
Could you repeat that?
Point it right towards your mouth.
There's a die-in at Portman's office Thursday at 4:30.
Diane at Portman's
312
office.
Walnut Street.
Welcome back to Sid. I'm not going to scream about him because he's asleep, but he's our youngest Democrat, and I'm glad to see him here again. She can only do that because her older children are now in school. His mom's name is Deb. We've got to sign you up for me. I want to tell everybody about my continuing saga about the buttons. I have been wanting buttons since day one, and my children decided to get, when they asked me what my birthday present should be in April, I said, I want a button maker. And they said, well, that seems to go along with the projector we got for you for Christmas. I want you to, anyway, I just ordered 250 more buttons, and they don't fit my Chinese machine. So I'm going to have to go and invest in another. I think I'm going to go into an American-made machine. I really want the buttons. It's something that I really liked in Tucson when I saw they all had their name buttons, and I thought it was a nice thing. I'm determined to have them for this group, and I'm gonna have to go and buy an American button maker machine. I'm
So donations are welcome.
Donations are welcome. They cost a bundle. I'm sorry about that. Noha just walked in. Where's the microphone? Let's see if we can get Noha to the microphone. Noha is from Warren County, and she's running for school board in Mason. And I feel like she's a product of we were really encouraging her to go and do this. We need to keep on supporting her as we can, even if we can't vote for her. And she needs your enthusiasm, folks.
Thank you. I'm Noha. I'm from Warren County, little Warren County out there. I'm running for Mason School Board. I have a Facebook page, Noha for Mason School Board. I have all my issues out there, plain and simple. It's number one is diversity. Mason is a very diverse community, but there's no diversity on the boards. I don't want any child to be treated any differently because of their skin color or religion or anything. Just yesterday, I was attacked very badly on Facebook because of that, and I don't take it
Because of your
personally
diversity?
because I know.
You were attacked on Facebook?
I don't take it personally because I've been through this so many years.
The trolls out there love
Yeah,
Facebook.
exactly.
Just trolls.
So it is what it is. You just need to teach those people. It's all about ignorance, and they don't know who you are. They don't know what you are. They just hear your name, know what your background is, and they just start attacking out of ignorance. So just keep spreading my word. Just keep spreading my name. Anybody who has any questions or anything, I'm always there, answering emails, questions, around the clock. So, and thank you.
Well, let's keep Noah there. Keep going. Do not get discouraged. How about Dr. Weaver, Dr. Laura? Your turn. Where's the mic? Here we go. Dr. Laura is running for Congress.
Boy, I'm on the run here. I just came back from the political meeting. The campaign is going very well. Oh, I'm Laura Ann Weaver. I'm the Democratic Party candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives in Congressional District 1 in 2018.
That's my district.
That's your district, it's my district. Let's make it every Democratic Party member's district so we can get Steve Shabbat out. I have, we are up to that part of the campaign where we need volunteers to do particular tasks. It doesn't mean you're going to be called to do everything and anything, but we need a list of people we can depend upon when we have something that's going on, and we need some hands on deck in order to accomplish what we've set out to do. It can be canvassing, it can be lawn signs, and stuff like that. So in any case, I have a list, and I am asking for volunteers in Congressional District 1. I'll be distributing an additional list in Warren County tomorrow, and we'll get that part of this campaign going, because we're moving quite along. I have my attorney, who is the counselor interceding with the Federal Election Commission, our compliance attorney, and it's amazing what we did not know. So that's the job of the attorney, and he's really earning his money with us because we're calling him every day for advice.
Good for you.
That said, let me pass the list around, and I can get on with my lunch, you can get on with your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Laura. Any other announcements? Meetings? Somebody, okay, okay.
Friday night is
Friday night is a fundraiser for the Greater Democratic Party, and it's going to be where? You're going to give me your ticket, right?
Oh, no, I'm in Hamilton. Your part
Um,
is next to Kenwood.
Longworth?
So we're sitting at,
We just said the
Oh,
center.
dear Park, I'm thinking of
You can look online. Go to the Ohio
Yeah,
Democratic Party, Hamilton County Democratic Party, or Democratic, I'll get it out. HamiltonCountyDems.org.
HamiltonCountyDems.org. And
And
that's,
you do not have to pay $150 for a ticket. If you call Caleb and say, I can't afford it, he'll give you a deal, a good deal. Because they want lots of bodies there, so.
well, my body's gonna be there because I got a ticket. I feel like I got the golden ticket.
And the speaker, I believe, is Obama's speechwriter, John Favreau. Is that the same, is that the actor? Same name, okay.
Too much detail, I don't do detail.
Okay, and that brings us to our speaker today. We have here this lovely young woman. Reminds me of my daughter. She's this is Kendra Massey, who lives close to here in this place that I really hadn't heard about, Highland County.
I'm from there, I don't.
From there, not anymore.
Yeah.
Right. She is part of a 24-hour hotline for women helping women. But I imagine you would help other people if people were in need. So she was an undergraduate at Xavier in sociology, and that just proves that people with just a general degree can accomplish great things in this world. And so she's like my daughter who majored in women's studies and psychology, and she's in international public health. God bless these people who go on to do good work with a general degree. Thank you very much for being here. This is Kendra Massey.
Hi there. So I am the Vice President of Programming at Women Helping Women, and I'm just curious, how many of you are familiar with Women Helping Women or have been before today? Okay, most of you are. That's great. So I put in the back our agency quadfold cards. So they're one side English, one side Spanish. So feel free to take one of these before you leave. Just gives a little bit of information about what we do. I did grow up in Highland County, but now I live in Cincinnati and Pleasant Ridge, so not too far from here. Before working at Women Helping Women, I worked for a very similar agency out in Portland, Oregon for about 7 years, and then I've been at Women Helping Women also for 7 years. So I've been working in this field for a bit. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the agency and what we do, and then I'd be happy to take questions about what we do and how you can get involved if anybody's interested. So the mission of Women Helping Women today is to prevent gender-based violence and empower all survivors. And so our agency name really comes from the history of the agency. So we started in Cincinnati in 1973, had a very grassroots start. So the agency was formed as a volunteer member agency by a few women from the University of Cincinnati. And the reason the agency was founded is because they were seeing a gap in support services to women in our community. So in the early days of Women Helping Women, the mission was more broad. So it was really about women's empowerment. So they did things like teaching women how to change the oil in their car, financial empowerment classes, that type of thing. Within a few years of the agency being in existence, though, what they started to realize was there was a need for rape crisis services, that was an issue that a lot of women in our community were facing. And so very quickly, the mission narrowed to be a rape crisis program. Several years later, we added domestic violence as a service that we address. And today, we've addressed all forms of gender-based violence. We don't just support survivors, we also do prevention, because we strongly believe all of these issues are preventable. You know, unfortunately, domestic violence and sexual assault are very rampant in our communities, but they don't have to be. We can prevent these things from happening. Does anybody know how common these issues are?
Yeah. 1 in 3.
1 in 3. Yeah, exactly.
Read your website.
Yeah, so for women, 1 in 3 will experience one of these issues in their lifetime, but men experience these issues too. So when we look at statistics for men, with intimate partner violence, it's about 1 in 5, and with sexual assault, it's 1 in 33 is what studies will say different things, but these issues do impact everyone. And so that's part of our mission at Women Helping Women, is to serve all survivors, which means despite our name, we do serve men. Despite our name, if you were to call our 24-hour hotline listed on our card, you might hear a male voice on the phone, because we do have male staff members and volunteers as well. We've done a big push over the last year to really reach out to individuals who we knew weren't accessing our services. So male survivors, LGBTQ survivors, non-English speaking survivors of violence. And so part of our goal is to really outreach to those folks who might have a barrier to reaching out to us. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. Any questions about the agency's history, mission, what we do? I'm going to talk more specifically about services. Just so you know where we serve, we're not just Cincinnati based. That's where we started back in 1973. In 2012, we expanded to Butler County because their local rape crisis program was at risk of closing. And so that program got absorbed into our agency. And just this year, we expanded to Adams and Brown counties, which are pretty rural. So they're close to where I grew up in Hamilton County. Those counties did not previously have any rape crisis support services, and so we had an opportunity to expand out there and provide those services there as well. So I think what we're most well known for at Women Helping Women is our intervention services, which is support services that we provide to survivors. And so last year we provided over 16,000 services to almost 7,000 individuals, unduplicated individuals in our service region. We do this with about 25 full-time staff and then a large team of volunteers. So what those services look like are our 24-hour hotline. So if you take nothing else with you, take this number, because this is a way to get connected to anything else that we do at the agency. You can call this number. It's 381-5610. If you grab one of our cards in the back, it has it on it. You can call this number at 2 a.m. on Christmas morning, and you're going to get a live person on the phone, and it's going to be a staff member of our agency. And so it's really important to us that when people need that support and they want to talk to someone, that they can get in touch with someone right then. Our other 24-hour service that we provide is our hospital complement, and we do that at 17 different hospitals in our 3 counties. So if someone has experienced a sexual assault, they have the option to go to their local hospital emergency department and have what's called a forensic exam done, where they do evidence collection, treat any injuries. The first question they're asked when they arrive at the hospital and they disclose that they've experienced sexual assault is, do you want an advocate present? And if they do, our hotline gets called and we send someone out. So we have people available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to provide that in-person support at the hospital. We also have drop-in hours at our offices. Our downtown office, we're there 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. We're there beyond those hours, but we're guaranteed to be there 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday, so that if someone wants to, versus calling a hotline, if someone would rather come in and meet with someone in person, they can absolutely just drop in to our office to do that. We recently formed a partnership with Family Nurturing Center, so they're a mental health agency in town, to provide trauma-informed therapy to clients at our office free of charge. So we don't bill insurance. We try and make it as easy and accessible as possible for people to access that service. And then one of the things that we really believe in as an agency, for people who've experienced a trauma, such as being sexually assaulted, being abused by a partner, for many people that feels isolating. So they often feel like nobody understands their experience and like they're the only person experiencing this. And so what we find really empowering is when we can connect people with support networks. And one way to do that is through peer-based support groups. So we operate 18 different groups around the community. So some are offered at our office, but we also have some on campuses. We have some that operate in correctional facilities. We have one at the Esther Marie Hatton Shelter for Women. So our goal again is really to have those groups where community members are so that they can easily access that service. And I'll tell you, I facilitated support groups for about 7 years in my last job, and I found that to be one of the most empowering spaces where people could connect with someone else who's had a similar experience, get that support, share resources, and build their network of support so that they felt empowered to move forward and heal. We also recently expanded our services 2 years ago, well actually last fall, to include support on campus. So I'm sure you've heard about the epidemic of sexual assault on college campuses. In response to that, we now have advocates who work at 3 of our local universities, so Xavier University, University of Cincinnati, and Miami. And so those advocates really have become experts in that campus disciplinary process, experts in Title IX, and they can really effectively support student survivors as well as faculty and staff in accessing support on campus, those specific resources. The other piece of what we do is tied to the criminal justice system. And I'll tell you, many people come to our agency and they don't want to report to the police. Why do you think they might not want to?
Where do you start?
A variety of reasons, right? Yeah. Yeah, some people have had a negative experience with law enforcement, unfortunately.
They blame the victim.
Sometimes there's a lack of trust, a concern that they might be blamed or that their case won't be handled well. And so our approach as an agency is we take a very non-directive approach to supporting people. We don't think that we know what's best for them. We believe they know what's best for them. And so if they're, what they want is not to report, but to access support services and move forward in healing, that is okay with us, and we're not gonna pressure them to do anything they don't wanna do. However, if we're working with people who do want to report to law enforcement or wanna take some sort of legal action, we've worked really hard as an agency to build up a good relationship with Cincinnati Police Department, some of our other local jurisdictions, our courts in Hamilton County and Butler County, so that when people are working with these systems, they have good support through that process. And so right now we have a partnership with Cincinnati Police where we have advocates, law enforcement advocates who work in all 5 districts. So they have great relationships with our domestic violence investigators. We have an advocate with the personal crimes unit of Cincinnati Police that does investigation for all rape and sexual assault reports. We have an advocate who works specifically with our city prosecutor so that she can support people throughout the length of their case, because I don't know how many of you have ever participated in a criminal justice process. If you haven't, that's fortunate. I'm glad that you haven't. It's often a more difficult, confusing, lengthy process than most people would expect. And not to say it's a bad process, but it is helpful to have someone sort of supporting and guiding you through that process. We do quite a bit of court accompaniment. So if you're ever at the Hamilton County Justice Center for arraignment court, which happens through Monday through Saturday in Hamilton County, you will always see one of our advocates there. Because when someone is, say, arrested for a domestic violence charge, they're typically going to be arraigned the next morning. The victim in that case may not realize that, they may not know to call us and ask us to be there, but the law enforcement officer might give them information about the arraignment process and let them know you do have a right to be there and you do have a right to stand up when your case is called and talk to the judge or magistrate. What our goal is that we're already there every morning so that for those victims who are in the courtroom, we can step in and offer that support without them even having to call or ask for it. If they don't want it, that's fine, but our goal is really to be where people are to offer that support for them. And I mentioned our intention to serve all survivors. So Women Helping Women has expanded quite a bit in the last 2 years, and part of that was due to additional funding available through our Attorney General's office for crime victims. Where we focused those dollars was on how do we outreach to these survivors who we know aren't proactively reaching out to us. So when you look at rates of abuse, so domestic violence, sexual assault in LGBTQ communities, they're really high. They're higher than the general population. But when we looked at our service numbers of how many LGBTQ survivors are we serving, they were surprisingly low. So in response to that, we created a position. It's an LGBTQ outreach advocate who's co-located with Light Health Youth Services. After 2 years of having that position, we've increased our numbers of LGBTQ survivors served by over 600%. And so that just shows like doing outreach proactively, reaching out to people to let them know about our services, doing things like on the tagline under our agency name, making clear that we serve all survivors, making sure our services are very accessible makes a big difference. We also recently hired a bilingual Spanish-English speaking advocate. She also speaks a bit of Arabic, which is really helpful because we know immigrant survivors experience this too, and there are additional barriers if English isn't your first language and you don't know where to reach out for help or how to access services. I've just listed some of our partnerships, but I think I've spoken to most of these. One of our goals in serving all survivors too is to partner with our correctional facilities because we know sexual assault can happen in jail or prison. We also know many people who are incarcerated have experienced a trauma prior to being incarcerated, and so we offer support groups at the Justice Center downtown, at the River City Correctional Women's Facility, at Lebanon Warren Correctional Facilities as well. Any questions about our services for survivors? Yes.
25 people do all this?
25 full-time staff, and we have at our downtown office about 60 volunteers. In our Butler County office, we have about 40 volunteers. We're quite reliant on volunteer support.
What do you have to do to be a volunteer then?
Yeah, so we do a 40-hour training. We do a pretty thorough screening process, and this is because you're working with people who've experienced trauma. There's a certain way to do that. There has to be an ability to be non-judgmental and affirmative. So we do a brief screening interview. We do 40 hours of training. We're actually midway through a 40-hour training at our office downtown right now. We do a background check, and then we plug people into volunteering, first starting by shadowing some of our advocates who are already doing this work. That's a great question, and we're always taking volunteers.
Oh, I was just wondering, not that I'm I'm not involved with it, but in social media, you hear a lot about, you know, the dating service or whatever, but, you know, this contacting through social media, is there anything, tools that you can use to, like, to inform people, younger people, all the issues and, you know, things that are going to get them trapped in trouble?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'll skip ahead and then I'll come back to community training. But you sort of brought us around to the prevention work that we do, which is mostly focused on our youth. So we have this as our logo for our prevention program, which is called Prevent and Empower, and we have a youth prevention team of high schoolers who help us develop materials like this, who they think, so that we make sure everything's engaging to the youth that we work with. So last year we served almost 4,000 youth. We do that in a variety of ways. And so like I said, we believe these issues are absolutely preventable. We just have to work at changing cultural norms and cultural values that support things like gender-based violence. So our biggest program that we do is a multi-session dating and sexual violence prevention program that's facilitated typically in schools, middle and high schools, sometimes in youth-serving organizations. So we go into, if it's a school, usually a health class, and we'll be there from 5 to 10 days with the students. We talk just about that, like what is the difference between a healthy and unhealthy relationship? How can you support your friends who might be experiencing this, or how can you encourage your friends to have safe, respectful relationships? If you see a friend who's acting in a disrespectful way towards a partner, how can you intervene to try and change that behavior? How can you keep yourself safe when you're engaging in social media and the internet? We teach about consent and what that really means and make sure students really understand what sexual assault is. But we do it in a way, so these topics may not sound exciting, but we do it in a way that's engaging and interactive and usually multimedia so that the youth really do engage in what we're talking about. And our educators are really good at connecting, so most of them are young themselves. They don't dress business casual, they dress more casual because they don't want the students to see them as their teacher. They want to see them more as like a fun adult to talk to. So they do a great job of engaging in that way. We also this year have started doing a national program called Coaching Boys into Men. Has anybody heard of this program before? The goal of coaching boys and men is using, it's targeted towards male athletics teams, and it's using the mentorship relationship that already exists between a coach and a player to teach healthy relationship dynamics and sort of to break down what we call toxic masculinity, so things that often lead to violence. And so we're starting this program in a couple of Cincinnati public schools this fall, and we hope to expand it throughout the year and next year. And we actually are hoping to do it in Mason schools as well. They recently reached out and are interested. I mentioned we have a youth prevention team, which is about 10 youth who they've engaged in training to develop their leadership skills, to better understand these issues, and they've facilitated their own prevention activities in their schools. They've hosted film screenings. They recently participated at Elements. They did an art show where they displayed their art, and most of it was focused around gender-based violence. They've co-presented with us at statewide conferences on gender-based violence and social media engagement with youth. And so we're really seeing these young people take a leadership role and saying, like, we're not okay with this in our communities and our peer groups. We also do quite a lot of social media engagement, so part of teaching youth how to interact in social media in a healthy way is us being able to post healthy messaging, and our hope is that they'll share that with their friends. And then our most recent prevention activity that we started this year, not focused at youth, but focused more at college campuses and young adults, is our bar outreach and training. So what we know about sexual assault is that there is a high overlap between sexual assault and use of drugs and alcohol. And so a bar setting is like a prime setting for sexual violence to happen. We had one of our local bars recently who had an issue with staff who were over-serving and sexually assaulting patrons. And so we had a community outreach to us saying, what can you do about this? And so we went in and we trained all of their bar staff on, well, we talked to their owners first and we reviewed their policies and their hiring practices. They ended up firing those two individuals. But then we trained their staff on, as staff who are seeing people engage in use of alcohol, potentially use of drugs, how can you recognize situations that might lead to sexual violence? What can you do to intervene to stop that? And also what can we do to support each other? Because what we heard from a lot of, particularly mainly women, but really everyone who worked in the bar industry, is that they experience a lot of sexual harassment themselves, maybe from coworkers, from managers, from their customers. And so our goal is to change that culture to be more supportive and more healthy. We've had a couple champions at some of our local bars in Over the Rhine who've really stepped up and are pushing for us to really expand this program. So we got some funding from the city of Cincinnati to work more on this bar outreach, and we're happy to be expanding the prevention work that we do in Cincinnati. And then I want to back up real quick and tell you about one other part of our program, which is training our community members, because we find when we're serving survivors is that the interaction that they have with people in their life, so their friends, their family, other support systems, other systems, can really impact their ability to move forward. So an example of this is if someone has experienced a sexual assault or is experiencing abuse in their relationship and they disclose that to a family member, maybe the family member is very well intentioned, but they say something that feels really blaming towards the survivor. That is really going to set them back in their healing process, versus if they disclose and they get a supportive, non-judgmental, I'm sorry this happened, this isn't your fault, what can I do to support you? They're more likely to disclose to more people, they're more likely to get the help they need to move forward. And so our community training is really focused on how do we teach our community members how to provide that supportive response. And so we trained over 1,700 community members last year, which included law enforcement. So we do training at the police academy on domestic violence law and how to support victims. We train quite a lot of healthcare providers around the community on how to screen for intimate partner violence, how to connect people to resources, how to offer that first support. We do training in college classrooms last year with law students, other social service providers, church groups. We've done a few trainings with Stephen ministers in our community. and then our Title IX professionals on campus. Because it's so important that all these individuals know how to interact with survivors in a way that's going to be supportive. So before I talk about funding, are there any other questions about what we do, our programming?
You mentioned campuses and cultural institutions. I spend most of my life on campus.
Yeah.
Do you specifically target fraternities, which I think are the worst institutional supports for this sort of abuse?
So our prevention work on campuses is new, but we are targeting athletics and then fraternities and sororities with support services and prevention services. Yeah. And the goal there is to get leadership on board, so like student leaders in those organizations to do some training and then spread that messaging among their peers is typically how we do that. Yeah.
Two questions. One, do you work at all? When I was involved briefly, they were starting to reach out to obstetricians and gynecologists because many times the highest rate for death in pregnancy is abuse, is being killed by their partner.
Yeah.
And the other one is, I have another place, but answer that, I'll think.
So do we reach out to those specific professionals?
You do?
We do, yeah,
Yeah.
we do. Yeah, I've done a lot of trainings with OBGYN departments, and they've said one of their biggest barriers is being able to screen in private, because when they see intimate partner violence or they have see indicators of intimate partner violence is happening, their biggest difficulty is separating the two individuals, because that abusive person doesn't want to leave the room, and that's part of the control. So we've talked about really creative ways that they can separate them, do that screening, and then offer the support.
Okay, and the other thing I've read is that the highest abuse happens among three professions. One is police, one is military, and one is the clergy. Is that still true, do you know? Or?
I've not seen that study. That's not entirely surprising. So we know domestic violence, sexual assault is about power and control. So people wanting to take control over a partner, feeling entitled to control. And so in professions where your role is to have power, I could see where that could lead into your private life, but I have not seen that study and I don't know for sure.
Oh, I just have a guess that if you have an abuser, say it's a husband, maybe, or a boyfriend, whatever, but I think the kids are vulnerable for the same abuse. So it's kind of like goes down the family chain. Is that something that you've looked into? Because I'm just guessing that's, well, there's a famous case just came up. Coach Sandusky from Penn State, I'm sorry. But anyway, he went to jail for abusing the athletes or whatever, kids. Well, guess what? His son is now going to jail for the same reason.
Yeah, so I mean that's something we look into, causes of abuse, like why do people do this? And for some people who are abusive as adults, it's because they witnessed it as a child. But that said, many people who witness abuse as a child or even experience abuse as a child grow up and lead perfectly healthy lives and are perfectly healthy in their own relationships. And so what we know and what research shows us is that experiencing or witnessing abuse as a child does not predetermine that anyone's going to behave any certain way as an adult, because people are resilient, and if you have models of healthy behaviors, you can change that. We really see this as a choice that people make. So it's not, you're not predestined to be abusive or unhealthy. You get to make that choice as an adult, and many people who witnessed that as a child decide, this was hurtful to me and others that I cared about, I'm not gonna be this way in my relationships. But I think it's important that people have those healthy models, maybe outside of their home, they get objective support. So there are a lot of things that we can do with children to make sure that behavior is not repeated as adults.
I've read that there are more male rapes in our bloated criminal justice system than there are than female rapes. And so I'd say the criminal justice system is the worst institution, not fraternities or bars. But we have, we lead the world in incarcerating folks. Actual numbers, we incarcerate more people than China, raw numbers. So proportionally, we're way out of whack with that. And that there's a lot of male-on-male rapes, and that really is raw data. Now, I haven't checked that out, I haven't researched it, but that's what I did read that.
Yeah, and like I said, we respond to several of our local correctional facilities, and we see the survivors that we serve, male and female, in both of those settings. And again, I think reasons we see high rates of sexual assault is because it's about power and control, so it's establishing control within that setting even. Yeah, there is the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which has been in place for a few years, requires all correctional facilities to partner with the victim service agency. So we have a memorandum of understanding with, I think, 4 of our local correctional facilities, because they have to provide inmates with access to rape crisis services if something were to happen while they're incarcerated.
So your relationship with both of the states,
Mm-hmm.
not the state prison or the federal prison?
Just the ones that are in our service region. Yeah, and those that are in other service regions would hopefully partner with their local rape crisis agency as well.
Yes, I have a question about rape victims. Something that I was appalled by that I heard just a couple of months ago in the radio is that locally we're having a very severe problem getting the rape kits processed. And I assume that those in your organization that are working in advocacy for the victims might be involved in helping victims who are quite understandably very distressed about that. Could you tell us where are we at with that right now?
Yeah, so you're talking about the Hamilton County Coroner's
Yes,
Office?
yes.
Yeah, so they did have a backlog of kits, so they were, typically you would hope a rape kit would be processed within 30 days, but they are understaffed and they were backlogged, and so they sent their unprocessed kits to the statewide crime lab. And so those kits are now being processed. And as an agency, we supported them in doing that because what we want is those kits to get tested so that survivors' cases can move forward. And so they owned that they were able to do it. They didn't have the staffing to test them in a timely way. And so they sent them on to the state lab to get tested, which we supported. The statewide lab does testing for many counties around Ohio, and they're well equipped to be able to test those kits.
And I have another question that I don't know if you're going to have an answer for this, but maybe you within your organization have been hearing some scuttlebutt about it, is namely DeBose has announced her intention to change on campuses, how rape situations are processed legally, and that she wants to quote unquote protect the rights of those accused, which of course on its surface sounds of wonderful. We all want the rights of everybody to be protected, but of course many of us are very frightened that means that the rights of those who have been assaulted are going to be that much harder to pursue. So could you maybe tell us what kind of information you're hearing about that?
Yeah, I mean, we probably don't know much more than you. We're just watching to see. So we've worked with our universities for the last couple years as they've responded to the Dear Colleague letter that the Obama administration put out around how universities respond to Title IX. And the purpose of that letter was to really encourage universities to respond more proactively to make their campuses safer places and to better support student survivors. And we have seen a huge improvement in the way our universities respond, and so
it would be a tragedy to see that roll back.
It would. Our hope with our local universities, who we partner so well with and really do pretty well in responding to these issues, is that they've done so much work to get where they are. Our hope is that they will not backtrack, that they'll maintain their processes that they have. And we're glad that we now have campus advocates to support those survivors, because we're not sure what's going to happen.
Are you familiar with the new dormitory believe it's already opened, that you see where people can choose to be in this dormitory. They have choices, that one and others. But this one is for, what do they call it? LGBT people. I mean, LGBTQ people. I mean, is that already open, do you know? And did it come about because certain of that community were rather afraid of dormitory life?
I don't know, I can't speak to that, I'm not familiar.
I can actually speak to a little bit of that. Many of the kids coming into the College Conservatory of Music and the dance departments are LGBTQ students. They're all in Sadal Hall, so they're all in there. And another thing that they're doing there, those kids are all now going out in groups. So any of the girls, I mean, actually the heterosexual girls, if they want to go out to one of the bars, they go out with their gay guys because they feel that that is safe. So I know a lot of that is going on the campus.
I want to speak just for a minute to our funding as an agency, and I was asked to talk about risk of loss of funding with our current administration. And so just so that you all know how we are funded, if you saw our budget, it looks like a jigsaw puzzle where we piece together all these different funding streams. The majority of our funding does come from grants, so federal and local government grants. Our biggest funder is the Victims of Crime Act, but we also have funding through VAWA, which is one of the funding streams that is threatened. We get about less than a third of our funding. I know this is hard to see, so that's why I'm reading it out loud, from private contributions and donors. We do some fundraising every year. We do a big gala every spring called Light Up the Night. And then we also get funding from our Greater Cincinnati United Way, Butler County United Way, Oxford United Way, and some other local foundations. The majority of our prevention funding right now comes from the Ohio Department of Health, and that's pass-through funding from the Centers for Disease Control. It's called Rape Prevention Education Funds. And then also, most recently, the City of Cincinnati started funding more of our prevention efforts through their Human Services Violence Prevention Funds. The funding that is at risk, and you can get more of this information on our website. So our current administration is calling for massive funding cuts to the Violence Against Women Act and the Office of Violence Against Women. And so what that would mean for our agency is that those funding sources mainly fund our advocates who are doing all those direct intervention services. Part of that is our partnerships with Cincinnati Police, which is so key to being able to appropriately support survivors. And so we would be facing about a little over a 56% cut to our staff advocates who do that direct service work with survivors. What we hope to do is really encourage community members to take action. So to call your senators, call your representatives, to speak out against these funding cuts, to spread information about what this would mean locally. So if over half of our advocates services are cut and we serve almost 7,000 individuals, that would be almost 4,000 people that aren't receiving these really necessary vital services. And I can tell you, I left the office today, and our advocates every morning, they have this lead sheet where they look at what are we scheduled to do today, what do our clients need, and they try and piece out to where they can cover every need. So there are mornings where we have 11 to 14 court accompaniments, and we have 6 advocates trying to do that. So they're running from courtroom to courtroom. They're trying to answer the hotline. I've been covering the hotline more because we've been so busy. We could get a hospital call, and then we have to sort out who's going to go there. And so cutting even one of those advocates would be detrimental to our agency. So we would encourage you all to certainly reach out to your representatives, call, write, whatever works best for you. What we've also encouraged people to do is, if this is something you care about, you can donate to the agency directly if you want to. If you want to get involved in other ways, you can volunteer. Someone earlier, Liz was sharing that she did a hygiene item drive for one of our local shelters. So even doing that, like donating items, donating bus tickets for survivors to be able to get to court and other services. Attending our awareness events if you want to learn more about the agency. And if you want to stay up to date on what we're doing, we're very active on social media. So if you have Facebook, Twitter, even Instagram, feel free to follow us and you'll learn more about what we're doing day to day as we're growing and things are changing so rapidly at the agency. Any last questions about funding or other things?
So I think we've heard a lot about an uptick in racial violence since the election, and I'm wondering if there's an uptick in violence in general since the election.
Yes. So one of the things that we've noticed is an increase in, I said that we've been really busy. That's because we've seen an increase in client services, clients reaching out to services. So we recently added, so we had 25 staff. We just 2 weeks ago hired for a part-time contract advocate just because our advocates are drowning in the work. Like we couldn't keep up and we don't tell survivors no. So we had to add this part-time position that's not grant funded. Like we're pulling that from our unrestricted funds because we have to. So we are seeing an increase in numbers of people reaching out to services. We've also seen an increase in severity of violence. So in Hamilton County, just in 2017, we've already had 5 domestic violence homicides, which is, I think we had 7 last year overall and 3 the year before that. And so we're seeing this steady increase. The other thing we're seeing as a response to current administration changes is immigrant survivors not reaching out for services and not reporting as many assaults. So we work in Butler County. We know there are issues there, but in any county, we're seeing survivors who are afraid to report. And so I've not studied our numbers on that, but there are other cities who've reported just drastic drops in rates of reports of sexual assault and intimate partner violence from immigrant survivors. So we know the barriers are increasing for some, others are reaching out more. And I don't know that it's potentially due to increased violence now, but I think also the current political system, people are triggered. So even during the election process, we saw a huge spike in our attendance at one of our sexual assault support groups after some of the debates. And I think it's people being triggered by what they're seeing in the media, and our campus survivors are triggered because they have this fear of like what's going to happen with Title IX. So we are seeing increases, I don't know rates of violence, but certainly in people reaching out for support around it.
Yeah.
President, I've read that most crimes by far go unreported. Is gender-based violence similar in that respect? Do you have any data on the proportions at all?
For sexual assault, it's less than 25% are reported, and then conviction rates are very low for those that are reported. And intimate partner violence is the same. And it's a pattern behavior, so most people that we serve who are experiencing intimate partner violence, they've experienced violence for the length of the duration of their relationship, and they might report it to the police once it's escalated to a certain point. Usually at the point that it gets reported to police, it's been happening for months or years. And so we know people certainly don't report every incident. All of these issues have low reporting rates and low conviction rates.
In terms of encouraging people to donate for fun, I don't need the microphone.
We can hear you back here.
In terms of getting people to donate for funding, is it deductible, tax deductible?
Yes, tax deductible.
Okay.
Even donation of items is tax deductible. Yeah, and please check out our website, it's just womenhelpingwomen.org. It is on this fourfold, so to get more information about what we do, how to donate, how to get involved, how to connect to any of our social media if you want to keep up with what we're doing.
I'm just curious, how many men are involved in your program and what role do they play?
So as volunteers and staff or clients?
As staff.
As staff, we have, so we've had, we currently have a educator, contract educator who's male staff, and then we have an advocate as well. So I said we had currently hired a part-time advocate, and it's a male advocate. So we have male staff who work directly with clients, and we have male clients who access services. So I think in some ways that's helpful that we have a diverse staff to meet the needs of our diverse client population. But we recently had a finance person who is male, so really any role that people are interested in playing.
Could I? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to let you all know, I've worked with this organization just a little bit. They are the most wonderful people I've ever worked with. They are caring, they listen, they give their all. One of the big things I got from you was they have this little flyer that flips. On one side is what a healthy relationship is composed of and what an unhealthy relationship is composed of on the opposite side. And those are so good to hand out to teenagers because that's where a lot of this starts, and they don't know. They don't know that but the way they're being treated isn't a good way to be treated. So, do you have that information on your website, perchance?
Yeah.
Okay, those are, every teenager should have one of those. They should hand those out at the beginning of school. So anyway, I personally want to thank you for coming and sharing.
Thank you for having me.
The reason I asked them to come was because I had worked with them, and they're just an incredible organization and one that well deserves being supported. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming today. Guys, you're being so good again. Wonderful. You have great questions, and I love the way you participate. That is really good. Was that good cake or what?
Yes. You can have another birthday next week.
Yeah, his birthday was.
Yeah, somebody else has to bring
Robert here, Robert Sturdivant's birthday.
Robert over there.
Mine's in October.
He was, I want you to know that Dr. Laura said, I can't eat this cake because I haven't sung him happy birthday. Can we sing it once again?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Robert. Happy birthday to you.
There you go.
And he has a little announcement.
The birthday criteria has been satisfied.
It's my 21st birthday. I like my first legal drink.
Yes, that'll be all right.
But I just got a fortune cookie. It says an upcoming event will reunite you with old friends.
Oh.
That's very nice. I mean, very apropos. And I want to thank our speaker too.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
Very
It was really good. Let's see. Oh, coming people. We have some good things coming out now. Next week, I will not be here, but Katie will be here, and she's going to be getting to introduce my friend Nick Hosel, who is a pharmacist who I think he was in Afghanistan or Pakistan, one of those Peace Corps. But his thing is humor, and he has a joke about every disease you can think of. And he is just really engaging. You will really enjoy next week, I promise.
It's called therapeutic humor because sometimes we definitely need it.
Ain't that the truth? I'm going to have to apologize because I'm not going to be here. My daughter is in Nicaragua, and I've got to go and help with the grandchildren.
Oh, it's so terrible.
Sorry about that. And then we have Leo Pearson coming for Vote No on the Drug Relief Act. And I'm looking forward to Judge Vandenracker, what judges do what. And I have a special handout for that, because I have another handout from the League of Women Voters that says what judges do what, and I think that will help. So thank you for coming today. You are a great audience. Thank you, and I hope I see you all again. Thank you.
Thanks, Albert.